Conspiracy Unlimited with Richard Syrett.
On this episode, an author's book of fiction offers a chilling, cautionary tale about the mind control powers of social media.
The real threat that we have is that through these algorithms and artificial intelligence and the like, ultimately, we can create personalized DNA, psychological DNA for anybody out there by all the reactions and the analysis that can be done. That's when it becomes the motivator. That's when you can plant the seeds in folks' minds. And they do it on a low level today. I think it actually happens today in some levels, but it's just going to get better and better. There's no question about that.
This podcast is brought to you by Paranormal Contractors. If you have unwanted paranormal activity in your home or business, this is no time to be dealing with amateurs. You need to bring in the professionals. Paranormal Contractors is a division of crime and trauma scene cleaners. They utilize the latest scientific technology to investigate, authenticate, and remediate your ghost or demon problem. Call them at this new number, 631-552-5835. 631-552-5835. That's 631-552-5835. Email paranormalcontractors@gmail.com and tell them Richard sent you. Check out their YouTube channel, Paranormal Contractors, for things that go bump in the night. Welcome to your Friday. Douglas Wood, the author of a brand new book, a techno thriller about social media and mind control, is standing by. And Christian Dicadieu will also be here, the co-host of Reverse Speech Radio, with another amazing reversal. Although Dark Data, Control-Alt-Delete, is a work of fiction, the experts that Douglas Wood interviewed while writing the book warned that the reality of this book's scenes could be just one click, share, tweet, or like away. Dark Data sheds light on the dangers of social media and the mystery that is the selfish ledger. Involving questionable characters in positions high and low, Douglas brilliantly portrays what could happen if the wrong people control information that has the potential to destroy us all. Douglas is the author of the award-winning Samantha Harrison political trilogy. In 2018, he published his memoir, Asshole Attorney, Musings, Memories, and Missteps in a 40-Year Career. A partner at Reed Smith, he has over 4 decades of experience in the practice of entertainment and media law, allowing him to frequently impart knowledge gained from his career into his books. He and his wife live in New Jersey. Douglas Wood, welcome to Conspiracy Unlimited. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Congratulations on Dark Data, Control-Alt-Delete. Give us just a quick thumbnail sketch of what this techno thriller, I guess that's what this emerging genre is called.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good description for them. The idea behind the book is that an alliance between a financial terrorist and an Islamic radical terrorist, so that the financial terrorist who wants to upset financial markets and the radical terrorist wants to do other things, funds that exercise in order to create financial chaos throughout the world. So that's kind of the underlying premise, and it then takes it from there to go into the way people are manipulated by social media and other postings, and how they have essentially lost all semblance of privacy, even though they may think they have it, and can actually be motivated and mapped from their behavioral standpoint, and then influenced to do acts or whatever the terrorists may want them to do subconsciously. So it derives from a video idea that was out there called the selfish ledger by Google. And it talks about the psychological DNA that can be created by accumulating all of the data that we share knowingly and unknowingly on the internet. And that then can be mined and mapped via, artificial intelligence and otherwise machine learning. And ultimately then communications, and this is sort of the gist of the story here, is a particular character then has the ability in this book to send messages to people all around the world and cause them to do terrorist acts as if they were doing it with their own volition, when in fact they are not. They're compelled to do it because of the deep psychological knowledge that this selfish ledger and the DNA can be used to motivate people. So the idea is that, when I write my novels, I try to make sure they are not just, pure fiction, but they're based on facts and are very plausible. So that's the gist of this book, is to hopefully scare the bejesus out of people in terms of the next time they post or click or like or whatever.
I hope it does. I really hope it does, because I am seeing social media and the implications, particularly when we're talking about algorithms and AI, as a potential existential threat. So let's talk a bit more about Selfish Ledger, because the question that I have is the future here, now, already? I mean, is it upon us?
Well, I don't think there's any question that it is, but it may be in its early stages, but it's definitely here. And we see how it's used for recruiting terrorism, how it's used in sort of a more obvious method to influence people's behavior. But that's just the beginning of it. The real threat that we have is that through these algorithms and artificial intelligence and the like, ultimately we can create personalized DNA, psychological DNA for anybody out there. By all the reactions and the analysis that can be done, that's when it becomes the motivator. That's when you can plant the seeds in folks' minds, and they do it on a low level today. I think it actually happens today in some levels, but it's just going to get better and better. There's no question about that. I mean, artificial intelligence is expanding at exponential rates, and it's just a matter of time before it will be able to. Artificial and massive computers will be able to make decisions faster than we can, and be able to analyze amounts of data in milliseconds that would take us many years to even begin to try to absorb. And when that happens, then I believe that what I've said in my book will happen.
Well, let's look at China's social credit system. And they hired,
right.
I think it was Alibaba, to help develop these algorithms. And in order to determine an individual, 1.3 billion souls in China, to determine their social credit scores. And, if you drink too much, if you play too many video games, if you speak ill of the government, your score will go down. And how different is that from the Selfish Ledger?
It's not much. I mean, China right now has facial recognition software that's in place that is mapping people whenever they're in China. It's far advanced, more advanced facial recognition than what we're used to here. And what they're doing in China is they're doing exactly what you said. They're scoring people, and then they're punishing people. If they don't like what you have done or they want to change your behavior, they'll deny you internet access. So they can turn the internet off and on for you, or not allow you to do transactions on the internet. So they're using it not only to map the people's behavior, but also, if they don't like that behavior, to punish them.
Right, and I think there's been instances where people have been denied entrance to university of their choice, or even getting on a train, or leaving the country because their credit score. The scary thing is that the people of China, in large measure, seem to want this. I mean, they tweet out with glee, their social credit score.
Yeah, it never ceases to amaze me how people will take pride in being stupid, because they will post things and brag about them and say things that they know are hurtful and they know are revealing private facts about themselves and others, and they do it with impunity. And then they wonder why someone says something about them or they're denied something. And take, for example, and these are just fundamentals, where even if you're going to hire someone today, it's quite common to do a simple search on the internet to see what they're doing and posting on Facebook or Instagram or whatever they're posting on. And how often do you see people posting very foolish photographs? And that, in effect, will deny them a job. If I see somebody, if I'm hiring someone and I see them on an internet post where they're drunk and doing something stupid, that's going to certainly influence whether I'll hire that person, and I probably won't. Now, you take that and you can make it to a point where it doesn't matter what you posted this one or two times, but with something like the Selfish Ledger and all of the algorithms and the ability to take big data and dissect it into individuals' behavior, you can make that even more predictive and deny or grant people whatever you feel you need to do to motivate them to do what you want them to do. And they don't even know it's happening.
Right. And Facebook, a couple of years ago, or maybe last year, they began this program that assigns every user a reputation score which predicts their trustworthiness. That sounds kind of eerily familiar, doesn't it?
It doesn't. It's not far off if it's not already here in some form where we're all going to rate each other. We're all going to get stars, and we're going to, all have our Yelp score or whatever it's going to be, and that's ultimately going to happen. There's no question about that in my mind.
Well, and we certainly have the infrastructure here to implement, I would say, something like the social credit. We have the databases, we have the digital surveillance, we have, a government knows best attitude, which is kind of scary. We have ubiquitous social networks. To what extent is that, do you think, going to be used in North America to start shaping behavior?
Well, I think one way is elections. I mean, when you think about the creating behavioral modification, we saw some of it in 2016. We're going to see a lot more of it in 2020. That election is going to be filled with all sorts of manipulation via social media, whether it's going to be just totally fake, interviews and speeches that never occurred, or it's going to be false information that's going to sway people, allegations that are made before they're even proven, and then once they're made, they're impossible to stop the flow of exacerbating it throughout the population. So those are mild ways of doing it. And if someone really has enough knowledge on individuals through the internet and managing big data, they could blackmail them. They could influence them subconsciously. There's lots of things that can happen. And that was the theory behind this book. I've got a financial terrorist who wants to have a world financial crash that he's going to orchestrate by funding a radical terrorist to commit acts around various places around the world through different methodologies. And then their third conspirator is the person who knows how to take the social ledger and take that concept of the selfish ledger, rather, and manipulate individuals so that you no longer have to have organized cells. You can influence a single person, or you can influence a group of people, and that's the theory behind this book. So it takes that idea, tries to plausibly put it into a context that people will believe is real. And then they can make their own conclusions based upon their view of what I've written.
When you were researching for the book, who did you speak to, and what conversation, in terms of the technology and what's happening, I guess, frightened you the most?
I talked to a lot of computer scientists. I talked to hackers, both white hat and black hat hackers. I spoke to some politicians. The amazing thing when you write a novel is the number of people who'll talk to you. When I started writing novels, I always thought that, it's going to be really hard. I'm going to call somebody up and say, gee, I'm writing a book. Would you talk to me? And they're going to tell me to go away. The exact opposite happens. So it's amazing who you can talk to. But I spoke to a lot of people about this. And a couple of things that really struck me is the scientists out there, the ones who are the computer scientists who are moving this forward with the big companies and, the usual suspects. They are not hesitant to just keep moving forward. I mean, they if you think, I always try to think of something offline, non-technology that's an analogy to this, and the one that strikes me is cloning. Remember when cloning was a big deal and they cloned that sheep?
Oh yes.
And then the medical profession got up in uproars, and ethicists got up in uproars about the ethics of cloning and all these other things, and it kind of slowed down. And today cloning is out there, but it's not. It got stalled, and it got put some brakes on it. That's not happening in technology. People are going full speed to get as much capacity and speed as possible on these computers. And while no one knows can want to sound totally crazy that it'll turn into the Matrix or Terminator, or we want to see in the entertainment world, but there's an awful lot of it out there right now, and the scientists and the computer scientists, they're not stopping. It's going to happen. I heard a speech by a guy from one of the big computer companies, And he was talking about how they are mapping the brain the way they previously had mapped the DNA and the genome. And said, there'll become a day when we will be able to map every single cell, if you will, in your brain. And at that point, we can then create the ability to make judgments just as if your brain were making them. And he didn't. And someone said, should you not care about that? Should you not, should you not have concerns about going that far? And literally, he stood in and says, no, why? What's the matter with that? He just didn't care.
Right. I'm remembering a statement by Vladimir Putin a couple of years ago, and yes, he's a thug. There's no question, but I think what he said has some truth to it. And he said artificial intelligence is the greatest threat to humanity. Do you remember that speech?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and Stephen Hawkins has said that. Others have said that. I mean, Elon Musk Elon Musk has said it. So there's a lot of people who have said that artificial intelligence has a very dangerous component to it if it's left unfettered. And my concern is that, particularly given the nature of the world and the fact that there are people with far fewer ethics than we might have in North America in various parts of the world, and they're going to see an advantage to be able to have artificial intelligence, and they're not going to stop at it. I don't think China will. I don't think Russia will. I think a lot of Eastern European countries will move this forward. A lot of the bots and the infections that are in the internet, with these non-human traffic and all this other stuff, a lot of that comes from Eastern Europe, where they have no restrictions and their programmers kind of do whatever they want to do, and they keep advancing the process. I was talking to a white hat hacker, someone who works for companies and trying to secure their systems, and he was telling me that no matter how good our programmers are here, whether they're at Google or Microsoft or Intel, anywhere, there's better ones in Eastern Europe because they pay them more, and that they will always have a better programmer there that will eventually be able to figure out whatever firewall, whatever security system you put up, they over time will hack into it. And we've seen it countless times. So all the encryption, all the algorithms, all the protections that you think you have, it's just, as he would say it, was just a matter of time before they're broken. So that's why you have to constantly be on the defense and constantly try to deal with this. It's like what we see the other day where we were, the so-called Five Eyes, that's the United States, Canada, New Zealand, yes, Australia, and Great Britain. They were accused of shutting down a portion of the Russian power grid. Now, I don't know if it's true or not, but the allegation is that we have, I forget what the name of the program is. There's some program that the Five Eyes have that is infiltrating the equivalent of Russia's Google. And so if we're doing it to them, they're doing it to us.
Oh yes, there's no question.
And we're rushing. I would be more concerned with building internet defense systems than I would be another aircraft carrier, submarine, or rocket.
More of my conversation with author Douglas Wood when Conspiracy Unlimited returns. All right, that time of the week, Friday, that means a visit from Christian D. Cadieux, the co-host of Reverse Speech Radio. Christian, welcome back to Conspiracy Unlimited.
Thanks, Richard. It's always a pleasure.
So last week we introduced folks to Reverse Speech Radio. This is a podcast where they can hear these amazing reversals and understand how this technology works. And we also played a clip from the late British television presenter Jimmy Savile, who, as it turns out, was a monster, a complete monster, a pedophile. He abused young children, just a horrific human being. So we're going to play another clip here from Jimmy Savile. It's an interview that takes place in a car. We'll hear the interviewer speaking, a woman. We'll have to listen very closely, and then we'll hear a one-word response from Jimmy Savile, and then the reversal. Here we go.
Why do you say in interviews that you hate children when I've seen you with kids and you clearly enjoy their company and you have a good rapport with them? Right.
The forward
it's
speech.
Right there.
The forward speech, we hear a female interviewer interviewing Jimmy Savile, and she's saying, you say that you hate children, that you don't like children, but I've seen you with children. Clearly you have a rapport with children. And he has a one-word answer. He says, right. That's all he says, forward. But then the reversal, it's very clear. He says, I'm the devil.
That's right.
How is that possible? He only said one word, right.
And you even have to listen to hear that word. And the word is right. This is how powerful his unconscious mind and how convinced he was that he was the devil. He wanted to be the Aleister Crowley, the next Aleister Crowley, plain and simple. He wanted to be evil, and he surrounded himself with it.
Remarkable, remarkable. And just a horrible, horrible monster. If you want to hear more of this type of thing, you can listen to Reverse Speech Radio. This is a new podcast hosted by Christian D. Cadieux and David John Oates, the discoverer of reverse speech. Christian, how do they listen?
Okay, well, you can go to reversespeech.ca and find all the information, and all the links will be there to listen to the podcast. Or you can find us on Libsyn.
All right, we'll talk again next week. Thanks a lot, Christian.
Thank you, Richard.
Reverse Speech Radio, a podcast committed to delivering the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. New episodes drop every Thursday. For more information, go to reversespeech.ca or listen and subscribe at reversespeechradio.libsyn.com.
In another reality, Richard is a very strong and handsome man. Just not in our reality. Although I heard somebody passing him in the hall the other day, and it was, what a handsome man Richard is. I made that up. Conspiracy Unlimited with Richard Serrett.
We are back with Douglas Wood, the author of Dark Data. I just wanted to circle back to AI for a moment, because I'm remembering a couple years ago also Facebook, and they were experimenting with AI. And do you remember this? They had to turn it. They turned the switch off because they found there were two AI programs. They were chatting to each other in a language only they seemed to understand.
Yeah, I remember that. and it was, you're right. They shut it off, and at least they shut it off then. But I don't have any doubt in my mind that there are folks who are still researching that and seeing what other applications there are for it. Why not? I mean, that's science. That's what science does. And until they're restrained because of a sense of ethics or a sense of decency, it goes on. And there doesn't appear to be any real sense of ethics in this context anymore.
Right, except when this Frankenstein's monster gets off the table, we're not going to defeat him with pitchforks and torches. No, the one way to defeat it, and think about this for a second, the one way to defeat it would theoretically be to turn off the internet. So if you turned off the internet, all our sense of banking, communications, everything would go down. So that's not an option. So you have given the mechanism to convey all the information that artificial intelligence needs to have to operate. You have put it in the hands of the very beast, if you will, that could come to haunt you someday, because you can't. You're so addicted to it. We're so dependent on technology, and we're all on the grid that shutting it down is no longer an option. It'd be like taking the air out of the atmosphere. Can't do it. Right.
So how do you defend against that? The person who's going to win is going to be the guy who's somewhere in Iowa with a 53 Ford, no phone, and a shotgun.
Right.
Yeah, those are the guys who are going to win on that deal.
Right. It's like if we have another major solar flare, like the Carrington event back in the 1850s. Mm-hmm. Only the Amish will survive, but the rest of us.
True. That's true. It should go without notice. It should not go without notice that Facebook is now coming out with its Bitcoin too. It's cryptocurrency. So even that, the whole money exchanges, everything is going to be completely dependent upon the internet. China is said to I think they predicted they're going to have there'll be no paper currency in China in the next few years. I forget what year they said. Maybe it was 2024 or something like that. They're the ones who invented paper currency, and they're not going to have it anymore.
Yeah, in Canada, they're slowly taking this denomination out of circulation and that denomination blaming counterfeiting. They're blaming counterfeiting.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Well, look at all the controls they put in bills now. I understand.
In your book, in Dark Data, one of the villains is a Russian oligarch. But it seems to me that, and of course we went through all that hoopla of the Russians interfering with the election and so forth. And it turns out, okay, maybe they spent $15,000 in Facebook ads. But it seems to me that the potential villain is authority and institutions. For example, the police have these threat scoring algorithms right now, which sounds like something right out of, what was that futuristic movie? I think it was called Gattaca or something, where they're going to arrest people because they may commit a future crime. But I mean, that stuff is happening now with these algorithms.
Sure. Absolutely. And there are some good applications to those things, but the problem is that what all the good things that can happen in those kinds of situations, nowadays they are capable of doing the exact opposite, and they're very inexpensive, very easy to access. They can be accessed anywhere in the world and used and influence people wherever you want. And trying to trace it and know where its source is increasingly impossible, or it's coming out of a country that doesn't care what the people do, authorities there that don't care. So, it's putting good tools in the hands of criminals who can then use them to their heart's content with impunity.
To what extent is, let's say, Antifa, for example, and they just seem to be running rampant in places like Portland. To what extent do you think their actions are being manipulated by social media?
Good question. I don't know. I think they're amateurish in terms of they're just a bunch of thugs for the most part, and provocateurs. I think that social media really is where it's really more invasive, is much more subtle. You can get a flash mob going on social media, and that's all well and fine, and you can cause a riot to unravel something. And I'm not saying that that's good; it's all bad, but planting the seeds with individuals whose behavior you've been able to map and then influence, to me, is a much bigger issue and a much more powerful tool that we'll see eventually evolve.
And to what extent are the social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Google, YouTube, to what extent are they culpable in this scenario?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. And if we sort of look historically, we've always had a philosophy, at least in the States, that common carriers, as they're called, the telephone company, that if I call you up and threaten you on the telephone company is not liable for that, because we need the communication device. So if someone happens to use that device in an illegal fashion, the underlying company is not involved. And that's the defense that the Googles and Facebooks use today. They want to be seen as a common carrier. The argument, however, is that unlike the telephone, where you're just talking, to one another, they have the ability to look at content, to be aware of what's going on. They can monitor it, and they have folks who do that. They have folks who literally, look at a lot of the stuff that's posted, and don't allow it up. But on the other hand, a lot of stuff does get up there, and it's impossible from their perspective to control that. So we're at a point where you'd think that there would be a technology application that they ought to be spending a lot more money on than they are, because they're making so much money, that they ought to be culpable. And there have been, some bills in Congress down here that have tried to create liability for the platforms. They haven't passed. So they're very strong lobbies, and they want to be viewed as a common carrier. Now, let's look at the other side of that coin. Let's say they're going to be culpable. We'll make them culpable. Then what's going to happen? There's going to be censorship like you wouldn't believe. And so there'll be a lot of good stuff thrown out with the bad stuff. Is that what we want? So the questions, the answers that we've sort of dug a hole for ourselves here are very difficult to come by, to come up with an answer today, because we become so addicted to this, and it's so much of our lives and so important in our lives, that if they started to take it away, I mean, it's exactly, which is exactly what China's doing. They're using it as the weapon. So, Facebook, Google, Twitter can all eventually be weaponized in the wrong hands.
To what extent is this problem going to be exacerbated by 5G?
If you listen to folks who are allegedly knowledgeable in 5G, it's going to put everything on steroids in terms of speed, and it'll just make it a lot easier to manipulate big data and to get the information in remote areas, so that the cell tower problem is not as acute with 5G. So it's going to make it all the more easy to mine and store and manipulate the data.
Would you like to see sort of a Teddy Roosevelt maneuver like he did with Standard Oil, and see these giant Silicon Valley companies and so forth broken up?
I don't know. I don't know that that's the answer. I mean, there's obviously folks who feel they're too big, and maybe they are. I mean, some of these companies have grown terribly large, and they stifle competition and actually hurt entrepreneurs. But let's assume we were to break up some of these large internet monoliths that we have here in North America. That's going to stop the ones in China. That's not going to stop the ones in Russia and elsewhere. So the monolithic data mines that are out there, that have billions of bits of data on countless people, we can't shut that down. It's going to be there. So I don't know. Is it better to have a very large Facebook and Google here in North America as opposed to a bunch of little companies that are not going to be able to compete with the monoliths that are in the other countries? I don't know. But it is clear that they wield a lot of power. But on the other hand, maybe they need that.
It sounds, though, as if you're saying we can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. So it looks like we're looking at a very dystopian future.
Unfortunately, I don't want to sound like I'm sort of some kind of a nut, because I don't think I am. I'm a fiction writer, but with fiction, it often becomes reality at some point. We've seen that. I don't know how many. We see that all the time. And this is the story I've tried to tell in Dark Data, and I as my one editor said, it scared the hell out of her, and I hope it does. It scared the hell out of me writing it and talking to some of the people.
Well, if people want a good scare, how do they get a hold of Dark Data? Control Alt Delete.
It'll be up. It's officially published in early August. It'll be on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, all the online distributors, and in Kindle, and eventually it'll be in bookstores. That's up to my publisher. That's a question only she can answer. But it comes out officially in August.
Can they pre-order?
Yes, the pre-orders, I believe, are available within the next couple of weeks.
Douglas, thank you so much for this.
No, my pleasure. It's been very enjoyable.
Dark Data, Control Alt Delete.
Yep.
Excellent.
And just remember, log off. Good luck.
Thank you. Okay, before I dim the lights in my little studio beneath the stairs, I'll fill you in on what's in store on Monday's edition of Conspiracy Unlimited. If you're a fan of this podcast, or my weekly radio program, The Conspiracy Show, or my YouTube channel, Strange Planet, I hope you'll consider becoming an official donor. A donation of $50 a month places you in the Star Chamber. $20 a month is the Whistleblower tier, and a donation of just $10 per month makes you a truth seeker. Star Chamber and Whistleblower members can participate in an exclusive monthly online chat or video conference with me, and all donors are entered into a monthly draw for Strange Planet merchandise. Any monthly amount is welcome and greatly appreciated. To become an official donor, go to patreon.com/Strange Planet. Patreon.com/Strange Planet. Coming up next on Conspiracy Unlimited, the star of the Discovery Channel's Raised Hunting discusses the anti-hunting movement and what it's like being a Christian conservative on television.
We've had death threats. We've had threats to not only kill us, but to do it in such a way that you would never even dream that someone could even think of that, and sent to us through social media or email messages, to the point where my wife has had times where she was afraid to go out of the house. And these are the people that supposedly love the animals.
Until then, I'm Richard Serrett. So long for now.